Should you move money from your ISA into a pension plan? I made a video a week or so ago exploring the benefits of doing the exact opposite to this, and people rightly made a handful of comments discussing the benefits of going from your ISA to a pension pot. So in this video, I'm going to run you through when this would be beneficial and how it could really improve your financial position as you approach retirement. So I want to dive straight into this one and talk about what I think can immediately provide some real value for people whose income falls within the higher or additional rate bands. So as most of you probably know, one of, if not the biggest benefit of pension contributions is the tax relief achieved on these contributions. Whatever we pay into our pension pots will effectively be topped up by the tax that you would otherwise have paid on that money if you did not contribute it. This is clearly a benefit that ISAs don't have. In fact, ISAs have absolutely no financial benefit in terms of how your money is treated on the way in. So the money you contribute to your ISA will have already been taxed at whatever your marginal rate of tax is, and you don't get that tax added back. With an ISA, however, once you've made the contributions, you have an asset that grows capital gains tax-free in the same way as a pension, but that also is exempt from income tax when you take the money out of the account. Whereas the pension withdrawals are taxed at whatever your marginal rate of tax is. So what does this mean for us, and what am I getting at when I say there's scope for higher and additional rate taxpayers to gain an edge here? So last caveat before I get into this is the following scenarios are assuming we have money already invested in an ISA and that we would pull the money out and reinvest it into a pension pot. Not to be confused with simply having the cash already uninvested and choosing whether to invest in one of pension or ISA. So keep that in mind. So let's use a common example. We have someone who is 58 years old, looking to retire in the next few years. We have a stocks and shares ISA as well as a private pension. And we earn an annual salary of 80 grand and expect that in retirement, an annual gross income, meaning the amount of money we're looking to withdraw in retirement before taxes applied, of around 30 to 40 grand a year should be sufficient in order to maintain our desired quality of life. And around the last 10 grand of this will need to be drawn down from your pension or withdrawn from your ISA. So with that in mind, what we need to ask ourselves is, what are we currently gaining or anticipating gaining from having money sitting within our stocks and shares ISA? But we aren't going to be drawing down from any of our assets while we're still in work for the next few years. So if we project into the future when we will start drawing down to support that 30 to 40k income goal, what we're gaining over a pension drawdown is tax-free withdrawal. So like I said, let's say we need to draw down 10 grand a year from either our ISA or pension in order to supplement the other sources of income. We could be paying no tax on the ISA withdrawals compared to 2 grand or 1.5 grand, assuming we take the 25% tax-free lump sum if we withdraw from our pension. That, however, is just the immediate tax impact upon withdrawal. There's a lot more to this, so let's look at an example in more detail. Let's work with that same 10 grand figure. And now, to preface what we're about to do first, as I've seen this commented a lot on the channel, there is no direct mechanism to transfer funds from an ISA to pension or vice versa. These are two entirely different assets, so when I refer to transferring money from one to the other, I mean withdrawing the cash from one, paying the tax on it if applicable, and then reinvesting it into the other, just so we're clear. So we withdraw that same 10 grand from our ISA while we're still 58 and invest it into our pension pot. So what happens right off the bat is that this contribution will be topped up by our marginal rate of tax of 40%. So that contribution immediately gets a huge bump up to £16,667. Now there are some limits in place with regard to pension contributions, so your total contributions must be less than or equal to the amount you earn, and all payments in, including those from your employer, must be less than your annual allowance, which is £60,000 for most people. There's some nuance to this, but that's a video for another time. So let's continue with this 10 grand example for now. So this is now sitting in your pension pot. So the first point of comparison here is the fact that we have a larger balance in our pension pot than if we left it in the ISA, and that means more growth. So let's say we invest in the same funds in both our ISA and pension, and we're planning on needing to withdraw the first 10k in 3 years' time. Let's assume a growth rate of 7% annually. 10 grand sitting within our ISA would have grown to £12,250, but our 10k that we instead invested in our pension pot, inclusive of the tax top-up, would have grown from £16,667 to £20,418. So you can see the huge difference here, that getting the tax top-up and then having a larger base pool of assets to be exposed to growth can make on your financial position. But it's not all positives. We now have to take 10 grand out of this pension pot and pay tax. So regardless of whether we're having an income of 30 or 40 grand in total, we would have in all likelihood used our personal allowance up by now, considering we only need a further 10k to reach that goal. So we can assume that this is now taxable at a rate of 20% due to us being a basic rate taxpayer. If we take this 10 grand out gross, we'd be paying 2 grand tax or 1.5k tax if we assume the tax-free lump sum usage, leaving us with either 8 grand or 8.5 grand of net income and £10,418 remaining in our pot that is associated with this initial 10k transfer from the ISA to pension. So assuming we then take the same net amount from our ISA, so 8k or 8.5k, would leave us with 4,250 or 3,750 left in our ISA in comparison. So you can see the pretty huge difference between what we have left in our pool of assets depending on how we allocate funds. Extrapolate this over years or with more significant amounts of money and this becomes really significant. But speaking of larger amounts of money, what if we are a higher rate taxpayer during retirement as well as during our contribution phase? Well, in this case, we'd have the same balance once we come to withdraw, but things would look different on withdrawal based on tax. So we'd have a net income from our 10k withdrawal of just 6k or 7k if we include the 25% lump sum, with the same £10,418 left in our pot. If, for example, we withdrew the same net amount of 6k from our ISA, we'd be left with £6,250 in the ISA. So you can see here that the benefit of the transfer versus leaving it within the ISA is starting to diminish as your tax rate increases in retirement. But what if we were a higher rate taxpayer in retirement, but a basic rate taxpayer when we were working and therefore making the contribution to our pension theoretically? Well, we'd need to rethink things then. So we'd only get basic rate tax relief on our initial contribution, meaning our initial 10k contribution from the transfer from our ISA gets topped up to £12,500. Applying our assumption of 7% growth for 3 years gets us to £15,513 by the time we come to withdraw. We then withdraw 10k of pre-tax income, leaving us with the same 6 or 7k worth of take-home income from the withdrawal, and we're then left with just 5.5 grand in our pension pot. Our ISA, for the same net amount of income, would have a remaining balance of 6,250 or 5,250, depending if we withdrew the 6 or 7 grand. It's also worth noting that these leftover amounts of money sitting within the pension and the ISA are not one for one in terms of their value. The ISA cash will always be tax-free, whereas this 5.5 grand in our pension pot, in our scenario, will almost certainly have tax applied to it on the way out, making the leftover ISA pot even more preferential compared to the pension pot amount. So I could do these kind of scenarios all day, but you get the point. If you are a higher or additional rate taxpayer now and either expect to stay the same or even better, expect to drop to a lower marginal rate of tax come retirement, using funds that are already invested within an ISA to contribute to your pension plan is often a very good idea. There are even more reasons than this though, of course. One way to get even more bang for your buck is if you're earning enough income to the point that the personal allowance tapering starts to take effect. This is when your personal allowance decreases by £1 for every £2 you earn over the 100 grand limit that HMRC have put in place. This then pushes more of your income into the taxable range, and by contributing to your pension, it is classed effectively as an income reduction, which means if you creep into this range by say 10 grand, contributing 10 grand to your pension will also restore 5 grand of your personal allowance that you otherwise would have lost. So you can then start to see some real tax savings. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful. If you're interested in working with me directly, please reach out to the email address in the description. And if you're interested in watching my video on when it's worthwhile to transfer funds from a pension to an ISA, which by the way includes more reasons than just that final example we gave, then please click the link here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.